Bryce Miller, what is your grade for him for the 2023 season?
I'm going to follow that question with a question. Are we grading him on a curve or not?
I have him. He's not graded on a curve for me.
Okay, so I didn't either. And not on a curve, I put him at a B-. And look, Bryce Miller had his struggles. Second half of the year, you could see he started to hit a little bit of a wall. His fastball started to get hit hard. The league figured him out a little bit, which is pretty normal for a rookie. But when you look at what he did as a whole, first off, the fact that he probably was not expected to throw as much as he was this year, but the fact Robbie Ray went down, they needed a permanent replacement once he got Tommy John. And it was Bryce Miller who stepped in and pitched like an above average big league starter over the course of the time that he was in the majors, which is a lot to ask for out of a rookie, making the jump from AA, might I add. But he did that. You're talking about a guy that among AL rookie starters, he was second in F4, only behind Tanner Bybee. That stands for something. Among all rookies, he was fifth, and he wasn't walking guys either. Bryce Miller was not perfect, but the Mariners weren't even close to making the postseason without him, so I gave him a B-.
In an ideal world, Bryce Miller, I think, comes up in the bullpen this year and fills out not an Eduardo Bizzardo role, like, oh, maybe in that slot, like sixth guy in the bullpen, probably. I think that's what we thought at some point this season he was going to occupy. But he ends up getting shoved into the rotation, and for most of the season, does well. I gave him a C+. I think he got bumped down a grade because of his final two starts of the season. I know he was out of gas. The Mariners needed games. And if I'm going to be objective and not grade on a curve, I think that's fair to bump him down because of those two. But regardless, just think about some of the things he did really well. First of all, came up and he threw a ton of strikes. Rookies struggle with command sometimes. He did not. He threw a lot of pitches in the strike zone. Sometimes they got hammered, but sometimes he would have these outings where he would be in probably the top 5% of baseball in getting whiffs. There's a couple of starts like against the Angels in August or against the Rays in July. He comes out, or actually that was at the end of June, regardless, same series. He comes out and he flashes stuff that would rate in the top 5% of baseball, and he'd get 20 swings and misses in the span of 4 or 5 innings, which isn't easy to do. But Bryce Miller showed at times he can do that, and he can do it in a starting role as well. However, there were too many times where he'd come out, he wouldn't have enough swing and miss, he wouldn't have feel for any of his other pitches besides his fastball, and then when he'd get into the 4th or 5th inning, his velocity would dip, and he'd start to get hit around a little bit. My to-do list for Bryce Miller this offseason: feel comfortable with one of your off-speed pitches that you are 100% dialed in to throw, because that wasn't where he was at this season. It gave a lot of Logan Gilbert 2021 vibes where he just didn't trust any of his off-speed pitches enough to help him get out of counts down the stretch of the season.
And Logan's fastball, at least by run value, was actually a lot better than Bryce Miller's was as a whole in terms of their two rookie seasons when you compare them, which is why Logan, at least by the ERA, might have had, well, I guess their ERAs were fairly close when they were both rookies. But you're right that there are similarities between 2021 Logan Gilbert and 2023 Bryce Miller. I'm in the same boat as you. For Bryce to take the next step next year, he has to learn a true third pitch. I know he threw a few different pitches over the course of the year. Some of them were just scattered in, but he needs a true third pitch. If he's going to stick with the fastball and the slider, that's great. But there's got to be some other offering that he can get to that really gets swing and miss and can be effective. Because what do most starters need? They usually need 3 pitches. Obviously, there's the guys that are exceptions like Tyler Glasnow, but most guys need 3 pitches. So if you're Bryce Miller, I think the offseason's got to be dedicated to learning whether it's refining the changeup, adding a splitter, something like that, to really get some bite on his pitches rather than sweep or just heat, and find ways to get swing and miss.
I think his slider needs to be better too. It was fine. It was slightly above average results-wise on run value. Not a perfect estimator, but +3 is not a true out pitch. It's fine. It worked. It was serviceable. It was not his sweeper, by the way, which got crushed. His sweeper, he might just scrap it. If not, he needs some sort of refinement on that pitch, because that pitch was getting hit all over the yard when he was throwing it over the plate. I think what's interesting with his fastball, the run value was 0 this season. Did you see what the stuff plus on it was?
Enlighten me.
It's 121.
So that is reason for optimism. That means he was 21% above league average for those who don't follow Stuff Plus or those 100 scale metrics in terms of what his fastball did this year. So in terms of pure stuff on the heater, we know that it's really good. It had 20 inches of rise on it, which is nuts. He's just going to have to find some ways to mix some other pitches in so his fastball can be that effective.
I think he tried doing that a little bit more down the stretch with varying results. He had a better August. September, he had an ERA over 6. And if you look at his fastball progression throughout the season, the final 2 months of the season, he threw his fastball under 50% of the time, which for him is pretty massive. He ended the season throwing his fastball a little under 60% of the time. But the final 2 months, he really did try to make that adjustment. However, we got to September and October, the Rangers and the Astros were waiting, and it seemed they weren't too fooled by what they saw from Bryce Miller. Globe Life Park for these final 2 pitchers was just a nightmare this season. I don't think they want to pitch there if there's an option not to.